and welcome to Lips of Steel podcast, unscripted, unfiltered, and unstoppable. I am your host, Nicole and today I have a really special guest that I'm so excited. I've actually been really anticipating this. She is a dear friend of mine I've known for over 25 years, and she is an octogenarian. She is coming in to talk about dynamic aging. And we're going to dive into what that means and what that looks like and how it can change your life. So, my guest, Joan Allen, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm glad that we had the opportunity to reunite after a long time.
Yeah, it's been a minute or two.
Yes, but we had a lot of shared experiences. I'll be very curious to see what you're going to delve into today.
Well, we're gonna delve into you.
Okay,
a whole lot about you.
All right.
So let's start off with, let's talk about your background first.
Okay.
Who is Joan Allen?
Well, this isn't really who I am. It's more what I have done, I guess. Okay. So I'm a retired elder law and estate law and estate planning attorney. I'm also a life coach, a dynamic aging life coach, and I am a mother and I'm an author. I just finished writing, I co-authored, which we'll talk about later, I imagine, and then I just finished writing my memoir. So, yeah, I've done a lot of very fun things in my life. I've been a fitness instructor and all kinds of things.
Okay, well, and you said you made the distinction of what I do versus who I am.
Right. So,
because we have these shared experiences, who are you? Who are you, Em?
I would say, it's always complex, isn't it? It's never one particular thing. But I think if there was one distinguishing feature, it would be genuinely curious.
Ah, yes, you are.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Much to the annoyance of some people. But it isn't just curiosity about what do you do? What's your family like? What's your favorite flavor of ice cream? But it's more about, what is it like being you? What's it like to be Nicole?
Yeah.
And I think that's really where the gold lives for me, is that's how I find out more about people and I learn more about myself too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
So we are diving into dynamic aging, and we're using that. That was the title of the book that you co-authored several years ago, which was very exciting.
Right.
So let's just start up with some curiosity.
Okay.
What does dynamic aging mean to you?
Oh, I knew that was going to be your first question. Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so what does dynamic aging mean to me? Well, that's kind of why I wrote my memoir, was that in 2017, I co-authored this book, Dynamic Aging, with Katie Bowman.
Okay.
And 3 other lovely women. We were all in our 70s at the time, and we called ourselves the Savvy, Sassy Septuagenarians. And this book this is a remarkable book, I would say, because it deals with, Katie has written her science. She's a biomechanist, so she's written about the science of movement. But the stories of the other 4 of us are interwoven in there. And what's really cool about it is that it also has a complete exercise program that can be done at home with virtually no equipment. And apparently it hit a sweet spot because it has sold over 50,000 copies so far, which, as I understand, is pretty darn good. It's been translated into multiple languages, and it's a good book.
It's a great
one I would recommend. So
I have a copy, and I actually bought a copy for my mother. I don't know if she's used it.
Anyway, the dynamic aging, for me, what it means is when we wrote this book, I thought, okay, dynamic aging, that means movement, physical movement.
Right.
And I thought, that's really the secret. If you want to be alive and involved in life and stay involved in life, you've got to stay physically active. Now, almost a decade later, what I'm finding is we don't always get to move as much and in the same ways that we once did. And so that's why I wrote my memoir, was because I wanted to explore, what does dynamic aging really mean to me? And what I realized was that rather than it being just limited to physical, I feel physical is really, really important. It's foundational to everything you're going to do. But I've found that it's more a state of being, a state of mind, and it involves mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually.
It's holistic, it sounds like.
Holistic, yes, it absolutely is. So it's going to depend on where you are in life and what it means to you, and also what your unique capabilities are.
Right.
Some people aren't able to move or aren't able to move much. And so that's why I say it's more of a state of mind. It's this business of wanting to stay engaged, continue to be genuinely curious about life at any age.
And it sounds like dynamic aging, like you said, it's going to look different for everybody.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like doing your best.
I think we always do, pretty much. I always feel like, when people say, are they doing their best? I don't know, does anybody really start out and say, I think I want to do this half-assed? I'm not sure. I mean, maybe it turns out that way. Maybe it looks that way to others, but I'm not sure we ever really set out to do that. I kind of feel like we...
Well, I'm referencing another one of our favorite books, The Four Agreements. And one of the four agreements is always do your best. And
True.
And that is defined as where you are at that moment. So doing your best in that moment with the capabilities and the capacity that you have
Yes.
Is, and I think that part of that mindset is, you say, I don't know if necessarily people set the intention or say, I'm just going to do this half-assed. However, based upon how they engage, whether they say it out loud or not, that might be where they are.
It might be where they are. You're right. I would agree with that. Yeah, I think so.
So I'm going to backtrack a little bit, but how did you meet Katie, and what was it that precepted you and Katie coming together?
Yeah. So, all right. So now we're really digging deep.
I'm just going to interject here for just a second, because when you and I talked about doing this episode, you said, well, I'm not really sure that I am the target age range for your audience, because my audience is 40 to 60 and you are significantly over that. I think you're okay with saying your age.
87 and proud of it, every year of it.
Yeah. And of course you look amazing, and you are amazing. So, but I said to you, my response was, we're all wanting to be you when we grow up. We want to be doing the things that you're doing. I want to be doing the things that you're doing. So there is wisdom in bringing in our octogenarians and our more experienced people into our framework, because that's where we learn. And
Nice.
So, anyways, back to how you guys came together.
Yeah. So I met Katie when I was 71, and the way
young.
Yes, so young. And I met her through my chiropractor, actually, and I was experiencing what we often refer to as normal aging issues: cranky back. I had orthotics in my shoes, couldn't really go anywhere barefoot. Just having things that nothing outstanding, but things that people think are aging, are normal for aging. And so I said to my chiropractor, I'm looking for somebody to work with. And Katie had a studio in Ventura. And so I went in, and I write about it in my memoir. So she interviewed me first. Oh my Lord. And I've always been a fitness person. I mean, I've taught strength building to older adults. I've been a fitness trainer for many, many, many years. So I know exercise. I mean, the equipment, all that stuff.
Right.
I know. And I've also been, I've done a couple of half marathons with Olympic style race walking. Yeah. I mean, I've been around the block when it comes to exercise, but man, when I got to Katie, I had never seen anything like it. So it's a huge, huge, huge studio and empty. There was no equipment. And I thought, that's really fascinating. And so the first thing she had me do was, this is really a big, I think the floor must have been at least 1,000 square feet, empty. And it had cushioned flooring on it. And then it had windows on all the walls, on the front walls, and then what did I say? Mirrors on one side and windows on the other
at the
side.
studio.
Yes.
Okay.
But huge, just huge. And so I went in, and there was another woman with her who became my trainer, Brina Maggio. And anyway, Katie said, okay, the first thing we want to do is we want to see you walk. And so barefoot. And so I walked across, and I stubbed my toe a couple times. Really klutzy and clumsy. Anyway, so she said, all right, come on back this way. And then she had me sit down on a chair and get up, and a couple of things like that, arms overhead, straight up overhead. And I thought, well, when's she going to have me lift some weights or, do some jumping jacks or something? What is this? I said, okay, fine, we're good. I'm going to turn you over to Brina now. And Brina's going to start teaching you. And she said, I look forward to seeing you in my classes. Well, this was a totally different approach, because it's totally, her work is based on alignment. And I had only heard alignment in relation to the tires on my car. So I wasn't sure what
So now you're going to get your body in alignment.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And that in itself is a trick. It's a skill. It's a learning process. And anyway, I won't go into the details, but just suffice it to say that it was very interesting. Also, instead of lifting weights, you lift your own body weight.
Okay.
That's what you're using.
Got it.
So
a little bit like Pilates, I think. Pilates is utilizing your own body weight.
I think that's true.
For the tension and the counterbalance. And
yeah, I think that's true. I've not done Pilates. But yes, the purpose of Katie's exercises are to strengthen the muscles, to work everything, the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments, the everything, and
everything that supports the frame of the body.
Right. So to get the body, so you stand a certain way with your weight a certain way, and with your feet lined up, with the outside edges of your feet lined up parallel. Well, I immediately felt pigeon-toed, and I said, well, that's, what's that about? Anyway, it was life-changing. Literally, it was life-changing because after, I would say within 6 months of attending her classes on a regular basis, I was getting better. I was now able to walk barefoot.
So my understanding, and this was called restorative exercise. That was what she called it at the time. And my understanding of some of the changes that need to be made is almost undoing a lot of the programming that we women got in our younger days. And put your shoulders back, tuck your butt in, do this, do that. And, I know somebody else who has been trained in another mutual friend who's been trained in restorative exercise, and we've had conversations about it. And it's like changing the way we type. We don't double space after a period anymore. We have to reprogram our brain because of technology. Now with that technology, it's reprogramming the way you stand, the way you walk, the way you sit, because it's not like our grandmothers or our mothers may have tried to tell us there was proper posture.
Right. And the idea is to optimize how you stand, how you move in the world, so that your body lasts longer, serves you better for a longer period of time.
Which is what we're looking for, longevity.
Yes. And so far, so good for me. I'm really amazed with the results I have had.
So you're looking at, you said you were 71 when you started this, you're 87 now.
Right.
And most people would look at that 16-year time frame and say, well, I really slowed down. I'm not doing as good. But I don't think that's the case with you.
It has not been, actually. So I became one of Katie's restorative exercise specialists. She had a training, a 6-month training, where she taught us the skills of actually becoming an instructor. And so I did that. And then with these 3 other women who co-authored the book with us, I had the idea, this is making such a difference. And it wasn't just my life where I could now do things I couldn't do before, but they could too. And so
they were younger.
And one was a year older than me.
Okay.
Yeah, Joyce is a year older than me. But for example, Laura was scheduled for restless leg. She had restless leg syndrome. It went away within, I think, 3 months of training with Katie.
Wow.
Which was pretty amazing. And she also had knee surgery scheduled, and she never had to have it.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
so really awesome. So we were getting better, and I said to them, it seems to me we should share this in some way. I think we should write a book. And so they said, well, that might be fun. And so we became the Savvy, Sassy Septuagenarians. We met every month at one another's homes, and our menu was soup, homemade soup, and See's chocolates.
Oh.
And let me tell you, that's the secret of longevity to sticking together.
I like the See's candy part of that. That's, I agree with the See's candy part.
Yeah.
And actually soup too. I'm a big soup person.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's good to know
Yeah.
that I put See's candy and soup together and I'm going to live.
Well, we'll see. Anyway, so we came up with a book primarily of exercises. And so we took it to Katie and we said, actually, Laura and I were teaching at our senior center. We're teaching Katie's work. And so one of our people there had said that her mother and mother-in-law who lived back on the East Coast were experiencing falls. And she wanted to know if we would write up a book of exercises. And so that's what we started out doing. And so then we took it to Katie because we knew we didn't want to do anything, with her work without getting her approval. And she took a look at it and she said, I've been wanting to write a book about aging. And she said, I think maybe we could collaborate on this. And she said, I would write the science and you all will interweave your stories into it. And so we said, oh my gosh, that would be so cool. And so, it was published in 2017.
And the other exciting thing about this book was it did catch the attention of a lot of people. We know that it sold 50,000 copies, which is fantastic. But you guys also were guests on Good Morning,
The Today Show.
The Today Show.
Yes, yes. So Maria Shriver came out to interview us, and they filmed us in the park, hanging from trees and doing stuff on
Famous tree hanging pictures.
And so we did. That was a really fun experience. Yes,
that's super exciting. So can't remember if I really asked this part of it, but in what way do you think this whole dynamic aging, restorative exercise, how do you think that changed your trajectory? Wow, that's a hard one to say.
That is a hard one.
Need more water. How do you think that changed your trajectory through your dynamic aging process?
Well, for one thing, physically, I was not dealing with a lot of issues. I was just feeling better and better. And then
you said you were wearing orthotics, and
yes, I got rid of the orthotics. I've never worn orthotics again. I several years ago we were on Maui, and I did a 5-mile walk on the beach barefoot. At an older age, I was 83 when I did that. Excuse me. So part of it was what changed the trajectory was.
Okay, I got to take a drink of water.
Take a minute here.
Okay.
So physically, but it also opened up the space then, to do more things. And so when I turned 80, I decided, what's next for me? I could just sit back and relax. Actually, even before that, even before I met Katie, my husband and I had read a book when I was 60 called We Live Too Long and Die Too Short, written by Walter M. Mortz II. Yes, okay. He's an MD. Okay. And at that time he said, we have the potential at birth to live healthy, active, and productive well over 100. And I thought, oh, yeah, I like that idea. So I have so many things I'd like to do. And so I talked to my husband and said, what do you think? And he said, well, obviously there are no guarantees, but he said, I like what it does. I like the shift that now instead of thinking, well, it's all downhill from here, we're in our 60s, but instead of thinking that way, what if we had that space up to 120? How would we do it differently? And how would we take care of ourselves in order to maximize that healthy active and productive. And so instead of like a lot of people downsize when they're 60, which is perfectly fine, we actually upsized. We bought a 10-acre ranch, forested ranch up on the side of a mountain, and built a home and started living the ranch life.
Yeah.
And so that was a big thing. So anyway, at 80, I thought, okay, there's got to be, I don't feel like I'm done yet. And so I thought, one of my daughters in fact, both of my daughters are coaches, but one has become a professional coach, a master coach. And so I called her and I said, I'm wondering if you could teach me how to be a coach, a life coach. And she said, gosh, I had never thought about, teaching. And then she said, well, actually, I have thought, because she's been practicing coaching for, 10, 15 years already.
And she's also a former attorney.
And she is a former attorney as well. So anyway, she said, let me think about this, Mom. And so about a week later, she came back to me and she said, you're not going to believe this. A couple of my clients this past week asked me to teach them how to be coaches. She said, I think I'm going to start a coach training program.
You seem to be a catalyst to make people think about what's next in their life. I've experienced that personally. We'll talk about that a little bit.
I hope so.
I hope. But that is in of itself. I mean, at 80, to be reconsidering and considering reinventing yourself.
Yep. So
that's pretty incredible.
Well, it just sounded like what I liked was what I saw about her. I liked the way she connected with people, not just as a coach, but in real life, that the way she would listen to people, the way she would be genuinely curious with them and make them feel like they were seen and heard and cared about. And I thought, man, I would like to have those skills. Never had any idea of becoming a coach. So she started in January of 2019. She started what she calls Transformative Coaching Essentials.
Yep.
And under her business name, McLaren Coaching. And I was student number 1.
Yeah.
And away we went. So I flew up to Sacramento, either flew or drove up to Sacramento once a month, every month in
And you went back to
2019.
school.
And I went back to school. Yep. And it was transformational. I hate that word because it's overused, but I have to say, in this case, it literally was true. I walked in one way and I walked out as a totally different person.
Well, and it's, just to kind of jump forward, but because of you calling me one day and saying, Nicole, I really think you would make a great coach.
Was I right or was I right?
You were right. And as you said, I've been doing it pretty much my whole life anyway. I'm, as a nurse and as an educator, and just somebody who has a genuine curiosity and interest in people. I was already a natural coach, but by going through Cammie's program, I got to get more of the skills, the tools, the foundation, and the framework to really pull all of that stuff together. And it definitely changed my life as well.
I know.
And it's one of the reasons why I'm here today, because I always say one of my superpowers is connecting the dots and bringing people together. And I love talking to people that are doing amazing things in their life, and I want to share that. So, it all kind of comes full circle, doesn't it?
Yes. And you are absolutely a natural. And I could see that from having met you before, known you before.
And you were one of many people who had approached me over the previous 10 years, but you were the one that got through. You were the one that got through.
I'm glad.
So coaching, it just kind of talking the whole idea of dynamic aging. Dynamic aging is not just about, like you said, the physical part of it. It's a really holistic process. And, I talk to women in my age group, and a lot of people are going down the road of plastic surgery and Botox and fillers and, all the different things to change and shift the exterior, what they see. And while that, I don't begrudge anybody, whatever it is that makes you feel better about yourself and, if it's going to give you the confidence and the whatever you need to go forward, feeling better about yourself, I absolutely do what works for you.
Right.
But don't ignore the other aspects. And don't forget that when you get to 86 years old, you don't want to be sitting in a chair watching game shows and that be your life, because there's still so much more to live. So reinventing yourself and constantly learning, growing, and like opening up new doors is just such an important aspect of aging dynamically. And so let's talk a little bit more about the coaching, because you didn't just become certified as a coach, you're actually working with people, you're working with clients. So you were very much not retired.
So right after I graduated from coaching, Cami had offered the graduates coaching on starting a coaching business. And I thought, I don't want to be a coach, but I'm so curious. I want to see what she tells them. So I said, okay, I'll sign up. And I created a business at 81 called Coaching Dynamic Aging. And I was able to work it into my the physical practice, the physical exercises. So I had a friend who I had enrolled into taking coach training with me, who had also been trained by Katie as a restorative exercise specialist. And so she has a very dynamic studio up in Point Richmond in the Bay Area. So I called her and I said, so I think I want to start a business, but I'm wondering how I might, how to start it. I'm not sure what to do. I said, I'm wondering, you have people who are doing Katie's work and they know me from the dynamic aging book. And I'm wondering if I were to offer them the, opportunity for coaching. And so she's a consummate business person. And she came back and she said, yes, well, what would you, what would I get out of this? And I said, I don't know. What do you want? And she said, COVID. Yes, COVID. It was 2020. So COVID was in full force. And she said, I've had to shut down my studio. And so she said, I've gone online and I'd like you to teach some classes online. Well, I was an instructor for 7 years teaching Katie's work in Brina's studio. And so I said, all right, I'll do that. I can do that. And then she said, in return, you can tell them that you're a coach and invite them. I'll give them your contact information. And my word, like almost overnight, I had a full calendar.
So what do you do as a dynamic aging coach? What do you teach them how to grow old? Is that what it is?
No. First of all, coaching isn't teaching, right? As you well know. Coaching isn't even really suggesting or advising. Coaching is rather facilitating the other person finding their own answers, which we all have for ourselves. No, when I call it coaching dynamic aging, we start aging from birth, if you think about it. If we're lucky, every day we get is a day we age. Right. And so the whole idea is to get people thinking more about dynamically aging at every age. What would that look like if you started as a kid and you said, I want to put as much into, I want to be curious. Kids already are curious about everything.
Right.
And so how would that change my life? And then as you go through life, for example, when I worked as an attorney, bringing that, had I had that vision for myself, I think it would have been a different experience.
So you said kids are naturally curious, which is great. And that somewhere along the line, through the busyness of life or whatever, we lose that curiosity. Mm-hmm. And I think we forget, kids just feel like life is going to go on forever. And then we get to a point where we're so busy, we're just getting through our day. But then the shift happens where the days ahead of us are shorter than the days behind us. And it seems like that's when people start taking notice. I'll be 60 years old this year. And,
congratulations.
Thank you. So kind of dialing back a little bit, but when I was going through the coaching academy, one of the issues that I brought up in the coaching, because we got to be coached on certain things, was I knew, as I was a widow, and I knew that I was getting closer to a new phase of my life, which is empty nesting. And so I started talking about that 4 years ago, and 5 years ago.
I remember.
And wanting to think about and plan ahead, because I knew that it was going to hit me probably harder than most, because I was single.
Right.
I'd been parenting, at the time I became an empty nester, I'd been parenting for 40 years straight, like no breaks. And so my life was all around being a mom, and which was great. I loved that. But I knew that once that role shifted and, I was suddenly, I'm still a mom, obviously.
Yes, of course.
And of course I'm a grandmother too, but it still was going to look different. So getting things moving at the time. And I am so grateful that I did all that planning. I would say that was my own little version of dynamic aging, because I started playing tennis again. And I started looking at my bucket list, and I started taking pilot lessons to become a private pilot.
Oh my God.
And, just putting new things into my life that were going to not replace my role as a mother, but it was going to enhance my experiences as an empty nester. So it was that mindset, and it was also the efforts to put things in place, because I did not want to stop living.
Right. Exactly. Because you're creating a whole new person. And we're actually, if you think about it, every day we're creating a new person. So many opportunities present themselves and possibilities, even when life changes. Empty nesting, for some people, it might be a physical change. And then they wonder, is it over? I mean, now I can't do what I'm used to doing. I have a dear friend who is in a senior living community where she started an independent living and now is in assisted living, has Parkinson's, is taking her down very slowly. And she still, I visited her and I said, do you see yourself dynamically aging? And she said, nope, I see myself as a wreck. And I said, may I tell you how I see you dynamically aging? Sure, go for it. And so anyway, she stayed involved. She was staying involved to the extent she could. She was going down to the dining room to eat with others, didn't sit at a table by herself. She was engaging in whatever exercise classes still worked for her. She was, using her computer to Zoom with other groups. She was staying genuinely curious, despite,
So, I mean, you can have an aspect not be as optimal.
Yep.
Like the Parkinson's, that's a very physical, impediment to being able to do things, but doing your best. She was doing her best.
She was. Absolutely, she is.
And you make the best of where you are. And if you are doing that consciously and aware and, intentionally,
right,
that will improve that dynamic aging process for sure.
Yeah.
So let's go back to your saying, how do you coach someone through this process then? What are some of the things that you use tools wise, coaching wise to?
It's really what they bring to the coaching call. So sometimes it is about age. Sometimes it's the fear of retirement. What's my identity going to be?
Right.
Well, what do you want your identity to be? And what do you mean by your identity? Let's take a look at the words you're using.
Yes.
What is identity to begin with? And what does it mean to you? And then what do you find is the hardest part about seeing yourself shifting identities? It's that whole genuinely curious thing, getting them to dig deep into what's going on. Where do you feel that in your body that you're going to lose your identity? Where is that? What does that look like for you? And it's that whole thing of...
I just kind of got chills as you were talking about it. I was like, I'm thinking about that.
Yeah.
My identity as a mom, and how did that shift for me? And, it's the identity roles, all of those things that we think make us who we are.
Yep.
And also, the thing that was playing in my head is what do we hold on to? What are we holding on to so fiercely and so afraid to let go of? Because then what?
Well,
Then what's next?
it's kind of like the devil we know. I know my identity as an attorney. Oh my gosh, the uncertainty.
Yes.
What'll I be? Or, I'm turning 80. Oh my gosh, what'll I be? Who will I be? Who will I be? Which is really, it's not so much the what, but it's who do I want to be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So, let's see. I mean, and it kind of, one of the questions I was going to ask you is, when do you start restorative exercise, or when do you start looking at dynamic aging? But you kind of started talking about that already.
Yep.
When do you think, I mean, my target audience is 40s to 60s-ish.
Start now.
So when is the best time to start?
Start yesterday. Absolutely. Because you get a jump on it. I didn't start till I was 71. Okay, so there were some really deeply ingrained habits in me that I am still working with every day. Every time I look in a mirror, I readjust my alignment. And so, yeah, it's just easier.
I remember watching a video of a woman. I believe she was 80, and she was 60 years old when she decided that she wanted to change her life. And she was somewhere in her 60s. And she started weight training.
Yes.
And she became a body. I mean, the woman was like 80 years old. And I'm like, wow.
I've seen pictures of her. She is, and who knew? This is the fascinating
her
thing.
muscle structure is incredible.
Yes.
And her ability to move. And I mean, she can do squats, and she can do like things that I don't even know that I can do now.
Yes. Well, so my coaching colleague who has the studio in Point Richmond, teaches strength building. Yeah. And
which is so important.
I do that. I started, so before my husband and I started on our big adventure in our 80s, I wanted to know that we were as physically fit as possible. And so she teaches online how to lift weights in a safe way for older people.
Right.
Yes.
Which is important.
If I'm doing it, trust me, it's safe. And it makes a difference. Oh my gosh, I had no idea. You can build muscle pretty much at any age. And this is what she focuses on. It's just, it's phenomenal.
We think, I mean, with women, it can be a little harder, and even with men, just because our hormone shifts cause our bodies to not build muscle, build tissue, repair, and all of that as easily. But movement and weight training, making sure that you're doing weight bearing.
Yes.
Super important for your bone structure and all of that.
And balance.
And one of my things, as a nurse that I look at, and I've got a mom who is 83. And the biggest concern for her is balance and not falling, because falling and having any kind of an injury can be detrimental to someone that is older. And it can, it can actually change the trajectory. We'll use that word again. So I can. Very dramatically. And very quickly. So thankfully, I look at my mom. She actually does pretty well. She's very active and involved. Right. She still drives independently and confidently. I've followed her and I'm like, dang, Mom. She's a little grandma dynamite there with that. She's out in her garden. She's outside. She's president of her fern club and all those different activities. But she's physically, she's not as capable. She has some other health issues that kind of hold her back. But where she is, she stays active. And I think that's, important, not just for her body, but also for her mind.
Yes. And also, I think it's important to meet yourself where you are.
Yes.
To recognize. And I think that's what was my realization when I started out, thinking the foundation of dynamic aging is physical to the extent you're able to do it, but it's so much more, that state of being. So if you can't do what you did before, what can you do? Opening up the door to possibilities and taking a look.
So are you familiar with Dr. Andrew Weil?
Yes.
Okay. So I've talked about this on a previous podcast, but he was an avid runner. Mm-hmm. That was his thing. He was an ultra marathoner and running every single day. And he wrote about it in his book about aging. that he got messages from his body that said, running is not the best thing for you. And he was, he really had to grapple with that. What do I do? Exercise is who I am. It's like really intrinsic to every aspect of who he was. And so he had to shift. He had to find something new, and he started swimming.
Yeah.
He's still working out. He's still doing the cardio. He's still, all the things. Swimming is a great exercise.
Yes.
Because, he still has to do weight-bearing stuff too, and strength training, but swimming is a great cardio.
Yes.
And so looking at what his body was capable of, he did shift, and
that's the whole idea. Yes, that's the whole idea.
And, letting go.
Yep.
We do have to let go sometimes, which is not always easy.
Yep. But it's also exploring. It opens up the door to explore what is possible. What have I never done before? Yes, and so that is the story of what my husband and I did. So Phyllis had a hip replacement during COVID, October of 2020, and complete right hip replacement. And so he recovered very well from that. But we had agreed to live healthy, active, and productive to age 120. We cast our net way out there. And so anyway, I noticed the following May, I said to him, I'm noticing that you don't get excited about anything. And that really worries me because it's going to be a really long haul to 120 if you don't get excited about something.
Yeah.
So I said, what would excite you? The hip replacement was done when he was 84. And so almost without hesitation, he said, I want to go hike Vernal and Nevada Falls in Yosemite again. And we had done it before about 23 years before. It's a tough hike. It's straight up the side of two waterfalls. I mean, literally straight up. And 600 granite steps of all varying heights to get up to the top of Vernal. And then, oh my Lord, an endless supply of granite steps to get up to Nevada. And then it's another 4 miles down.
Okay. And so 8 miles altogether?
It's should be 7.5. I say should be because I don't want to tell the punchline yet. So I said, all right, if you're serious and you get your doctor's approval, we'll do it. And so we trained for 1 year. We started in May of 2021, and we planned to do it in June of 2022. Family was going to do it with us.
I just want to dial into this. You went into physical training at 80.
He was 84. Well, when we started our training, he was 85, and I was 83. So we started
at a very young age. You guys went into training. Yeah. I like this.
So, and that's when I started my strength building with my coaching colleague, and we hiked everywhere and did everything, and we experienced multiple injuries. Which, that's where my coach training came in so valuable. Was first thing we did when he said, "I'd like to hike the falls," I said, "Why? What is your purpose?" Because without knowing your purpose, you may want to do something, but when the going gets rough, if you don't have a purpose that keeps you going, it's over. So I said, why? Why?
That's when the excuses come up.
That's what. So I said, why do you want to hike? And he said, because I want to find out what I'm capable of doing physically at this age and post-hip replacement. And I said, all right. Okay, I said, I'm in. I'm curious also to see what I'm capable of doing. So we worked our way through each of the setbacks. I did a year-long blog post. I had a blog going after we wrote our dynamic aging book. And so I had converted it over more into coaching, and then I combined coaching and physical movement and tracked us for the year that we trained. So unexpectedly, in May of 2022, we had the opportunity, and Willis said, I want to practice before we do it with the family next month. And we happened to be in that area. And so we took off on a bright and sunny morning in May of 2022. And it took us 7 hours of hiking. And we calculated on our Apple Watches 10.5 miles. Which was 2.5 more miles than we had done before in preparation. And it was hard, and we did it.
Wow.
And what kept us going was knowing that we were so curious to see what are we capable of. Is this ridiculous? And I have to say, you're familiar with the sabotaging voice, that voice that says, wow, this is the dumbest thing you've ever done. Wow, you don't want to do that. You're going to embarrass yourself. Especially you're writing a blog post. You really don't want to tell people about this.
Yeah.
And every time I got an injury, I thought, oh my, that voice would come up. My voice is named Sarah, the saboteur. And she's this little prima ballerina, about 20. And her favorite thing to say is, you're too old. What are you thinking? Why are you doing this? So anyway, so she was there right by my side every step of the way. And when we got to the top and we were really exhausted, and I looked at the sign and I'd forgotten that it was 4 miles back down. And I remember Sarah saying, oh, shit. So anyway, I thought that was perfect. So yeah, it was just a marvelous experience. And so then it took me to my next step, which was on the trail coming down. A gentleman stepped in front of Willis, and Willis has a beard. And the gentleman stepped in front of Willis, and he said, how old are you? And Willis says, I'm 86. And the guy looked at him, and he said, I'm 77. And I've hiked this trail many times, and I thought today would be my last time. But he said, meeting you, I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can. And so, we don't set out to inspire, but we do. Inadvertently, we never know how that might happen. Anyway, then that inspired me to start an online magazine.
Reinventing yourself again at what age?
Started the magazine the same year as the hike. That November, it went online, and it's still online, alive and well. And Sarah was very active, very vocal about, what are you thinking? I don't know technology. Willis happens to be an IT person, which is very helpful. And I have also a website person. But to create something like that, I mean, to just out of nowhere, and the whole idea was to create a venue where people, as they're getting older, are taking on these things that, maybe this isn't what you do as you turn 60. Maybe, most people don't start a podcast.
Right.
Aha.
Yeah.
And so that would be the story. This is how I see myself dynamically aging. And the idea is to pay it forward, for the people who are coming up behind us. What is possible? Wow, here's someone who was a mom for 40 years of her life. And now she's decided, well, I think I'll do a podcast, whatever that involves.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I took up coaching. I would say that I have always had that same mindset, growing, learning, after my husband died, which you knew Ron very well. It was not long after that, I went back to school and got my master's degree in nursing. And I started teaching in the university, teaching other nurses. And then I was approached by someone and decided to go to, it was actually in a law school, believe it or not, but to get certified.
I remember
doing legal consulting.
Yes.
So I jumped into that. Was a year-long program.
Yes.
And it's actually, I was doing that kind of coincidentally to the coaching, which I thought, what the heck? I do like to layer a lot of things on me, which I'm learning to not put some, I complain. It's like, I feel like I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders. And my voice says, well, then freaking stop adding so many things. Like, take it off. But I do believe that it is so important to always be learning and thinking ahead, because you never know when when your time is up, when the sand runs out of that hourglass. But doesn't mean that each and every day can't be about something new, exciting, change, shift, pivot, whatever words you want to come up with.
Yes.
And I feel like more alive today than I ever have.
Yep. And that's the way you want to keep feeling. I really think if I were to put dynamic aging, if I were to attribute 3 adjectives to it, I would say it's curiosity, it's courage. It's curiosity about what's possible. It's courage to take a risk. And then it's commitment.
Right.
To do whatever it takes to ride this out, to see. Maybe it won't work.
Hang on, I'm writing this down. Curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Courage. You guys write this down. And commitment.
Which brings me then to my book. So that is how, when I started to write my memoir, I wanted to discover for myself, explore for myself, what does dynamic aging really mean to me? Since I now know it's got to be more than just physical.
Yes.
And so it was a very fun adventure, something I've never done before. And I had a superb editor who also is a coaching colleague, who also is one of Katie's instructors. It's a group. It's definitely a group. So the whole adventure of writing the memoir took me almost 2 years. It'll be on Amazon very shortly. And
yes, the cover.
This is
your famous tree hanging picture.
Oh yeah, let's see. I've got a glare. There we go. Yeah. I still do that, by the way. I still go out and do that at least once a week. And
what is the purpose of that?
The purpose of hanging on the tree.
Yes.
It's,
or should I say, climbing trees.
Reminding myself that I can still do it, and when I can't, I'll figure out something else. But it's interesting because I started doing that, climbing that tree, when I was 78. And
that's on your property?
Yes, that's on the ranch. And I said to Katie, I'd really like to try climbing a tree. And she said, so why don't you? And I said, I'm 78. And she said, yeah, and? So I said, okay. So I went down. It's on our hiking trails. I went down and I climbed up the tree and hung on it. And I went, oh my gosh, I can do it. So I went down and ran up to the house. I said, Willis, get your camera. Come take a picture of me. And so that has become my trademark.
So, I think about climbing trees as being something that a child does.
Yeah.
Tell me, how does that connect you to that inner child?
Well, that goes back many years to when we first met.
Yeah.
And you had a child, and I had a grandchild in a program that helped teens make it through alive and well. Yeah. And I think ask it again.
So how does climbing trees help you connect to that magical child?
So during that program, when we did that, part of our role as parents and grandparents was to reconnect to our child.
Yeah.
And to be to be certain that child was still alive, to recognize that child still existed, that child still had needs and wants. And by connecting with that, I think this reminds me, when I go out there and I climb up that tree and I hang from it, and then I go to one arm, it's like, wow, we're alive and well in there.
And it's all connected.
Yeah, it is all connected, truly. Yes.
And that magical child is really, a lot of times, that little voice that says, why not?
Exactly. That's the one. That's the curiosity part.
Right.
Why not? Why don't we do that? Or at the last chapter of my memoir, I had a coaching session with a coach, and someone had asked me, my writing buddy had asked me, what drives you to do all of this? And I didn't like being told I was driven, because it sounded to me like it was, I go from here to here and I miss all the things in between. I thought, no, that isn't who I am. But I do have a drive, and that drive. So I began looking at the different parts of me. That, because, as you know from coach training, we're all kind of a conglomeration of parts.
Right.
We get up in the morning, we say, oh, I'm tired. But part of me, there's another part of me that says, well, yeah, but I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to, there's all those fun parts. And so we investigated the parts that support me in dynamic aging. We came up with curiosity, courage, commitment, but also that why not is the challenge part. Why not? I know there's nothing that says you can, but why not try?
Yeah.
And that challenge part is really a very cool part.
I have an aunt and an uncle. My uncle has since passed. And they were, for their 80th birthday, they they had the little why not, and they jumped out of a plane. They did skydiving.
Ooh.
And she was still, I mean, my aunt she still rides jet skis and she just turned 90.
Wow.
And she bought an RV because she wants to drive around the country and go to national parks and stuff.
I want to meet her. She's my role model.
Yeah, see?
Please.
I'm 91, I think.
Please introduce us.
My Aunt Barbara, she laughs. And that's one of her trademarks to me is laughter. Everything, she just has the most delightful laugh. And she approaches life with joy.
Mm-hmm.
Tremendous joy. And she's raised a ton of kids, her own children. She's raised grandchildren. She's raised foster children. She's got 30,000 grandkids and great grandkids. And every day, even losing her husband, my uncle was just a delight. That was my grandfather's youngest brother. And she grieved, but she still retained joy. And it's just magical to watch that, because now if you want to see that magical child,
yeah, it's
in her twinkle in her eyes. It is in the lines in her face. That child comes out every time she laughs. And it's truly magical. Maybe I need to bring her on here too, huh?
I think so.
Yeah, I think
so.
She's quite an inspiration.
Oh my gosh, I would certainly watch that episode for sure. Oh yeah.
So my gosh, Joan, this has been wonderful. It's awesome to connect with you again and to get the opportunity to share you with everybody out here, because
thank you.
I've known about you for a long time, but now I get to share you. And I think my last question would be, what's next? Because I know you're not done.
When I was writing my memoir, I recalled my mother always saying that, so what's next, Joni? And, it's been kind of a double-edged sword. It's like, well, wait a minute. Could I just sit down and twiddle my thumbs for a few minutes?
Twiddling is overrated.
Twiddling is overrated. So what's next is I will be focusing on marketing, of course, and doing book signings and podcasts and all things connected with my memoir. And I'm also, I staffed on the first 2 years after I did my coach training, I was on staff for the coach training. And then I still am a guest coach for the coach training, and I will be again in the upcoming year, which starts in February of 2026. And staying engaged in coaching. That coaching is something I always do. Also, the magazine is very near and dear.
What is the name of the magazine?
It's called Dynamic Aging for Life magazine.
Okay, and how do we find that?
www.dynamicagingforlife.
Okay,
The number 4. For life.
Okay.
.com. Magazine. If you go to just .com, you'll come to my coaching website.
Okay.
At the magazine, you have to add Dynamic Aging for Life magazine.
Got it.
We try to keep it all in the same, even with my memoir, I named that Navigating Dynamic Aging.
Okay.
Because I felt like, okay, you've written Dynamic Aging. Now this will be kind of a sequel. What's it actually been living Dynamic Aging? Talk is
put your money where your mouth is.
That's right.
Yes, you live it. You do live it truly.
Thank you.
And I will tell you that I want to be you when I grow up.
Thank you, sir.
And I absolutely treasure our friendship and everything about it.
Yeah, let's do it.
And I hope everyone will tune in, buy the book Dynamic Aging right now, read it, do the exercises. It's life-changing. And then when the Amazon book comes out, Navigating Dynamic Aging by Joan Allen, you will want to buy that, because that's going to be your guide to step 2. And just keep tuning in. And thank you for coming. And thank you for being here as a part of this podcast.
Thank you for the opportunity. This is the first podcast I have done with the memoir.
Okay.
And so I'm thrilled. That's right. This is a landmark.
And keep reinventing yourself and keep reimagining and keep asking why not.
Yes, exactly.
Stay curious, folks. All right. Thank you.